Welcome back to the Cherry Picking Podcast presented by Owner's Box. Today we have another guest joining the show. It's Scott Cullen. Scott, you have a great resume. I mean, you host your Locked On podcast, but you also write for The Athletic and McKeen's Hockey. Scott, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
Today we're going to be talking about some undervalued players, people that we really like at their ADP or that we're going to be taking earlier than their ADP in redraft. So, Drew, why don't you start us off?
Sure. Thanks again, Scott, for coming on. My first player is Roope Hintz of the Dallas Stars, currently going in the 6th round, about 65th overall in ADP. Last season, we saw him play 41 games, had 15 goals, 28 assists for 43 points, 18 of those on the power play, and he added 92 shots and a plus 13 rating. I really love Hintz at this ADP in the 6th round. I think that people aren't realizing how much he broke out last year and that he played through injury through the entire year and still had 43 points in 41 games. He's playing on the first line now. Seems to have great chemistry with Jason Robertson and Joe Pavelski. I'd rather have Hintz than guys like Besser, O'Reilly, and even a lot of the goalies going in that 5th, 6th round. He's an elite creator of offense at 5-on-5 with 3.45 points per 60 minutes, 5-on-5. That's directly comparable to Austin Matthews, Sidney Crosby, and Alexander Barkov. So just incredible, right? Like at 5-on-5, his offensive creativity is in the top 15, I think, in the NHL. And you see those comparables. He could even take another step this year. I'd be looking at Hintz in the late 4th, maybe even early 5th round of drafts. And I think next year he could be even going as high as 2nd, 3rd round.
Yeah, I think the question with Hintz is whether he can kind of build on what he did last season. Because as you mentioned, the fact that he put up those point totals while playing with a groin injury basically all year. You know, if you were somebody who kind of tracked this on a day-to-day, you saw Roope Hintz was questionable almost every day throughout the season. And then all of a sudden they'd pull him from the lineup for a game or two and then he'd get back in. But he just continued to produce when he was in the lineup. The one thing that I would be concerned is that he scored on like almost 18% of his shots. Usually that means that's going to come down because there are very few guys who can do that repeatedly. However, I think the big hope has to be for Hintz to stay healthy, right? If he stays healthy and gives you 70 plus games, well, then your point total is going to be, it's going to make up for, any concerns you might have about percentages coming down a bit or,
absolutely.
That kind of statistical regression. But yeah, I'm right on board with Roope Hintz in part. In addition to all that, because of his upside, that it felt like last year we were just kind of scratching the surface of what he can do in the NHL. And I mean, I think if he came out and was a point per game player this year over a full season, that would be a pretty big step forward.
Yeah, it'd be incredible.
I think you look at that Dallas team and you got Tyler Seguin obviously coming back. Jamie Benn's going to be healthy. There's a lot of offense going around there, so it'll be interesting how Roope sort of fits in with those guys coming back. It's the same thing with Jason Robertson. Like, what are we going to expect with Jason Robertson this year after an amazing rookie year? I wonder what you think of him, Scott.
Yeah, I guess my general expectation would be don't expect him to produce as much as he did as a rookie. Now I say that as somebody who had like no expectations for him as a rookie at all.
Yeah,
and then he was kind of the second best rookie in the class. And I guess the thing is you shouldn't feel bad that you didn't have any expectations for Robertson. Neither did the Stars, right? The Stars didn't have him in the lineup to start the year. When he first got in the lineup, he was playing 10 minutes a game on the 4th line. So it's not like they were like, oh, we've got this great scoring winger that we know we're going to get something out of. They kind of lucked into it in some ways. I mean, he kind of got a chance and ran with it. And this is the kind of thing that would tell any young player, right? Is when you get your opportunity, make the most of it. Well, Jason Robertson basically did, and they couldn't get him out of their top line. And so that's how that moved forward. But your point previously about kind of all these guys coming back and like that is going to complicate matters, I think, for Hintz and Robertson, just in terms of like Tyler Seguin's going to get ice time. They're not going to bury him, because of his role, his kind of fit on the team. He's going to have a significant role, and so I think that does present some challenges for the other guys, just in terms of opportunities.
It'll be interesting to see who fills out that first power play.
Yeah, I do agree. I think there's a lot of offense coming into that power play. It's gonna be a battle of who's gonna get some PP time.
Yeah.
I took a guy who also had a high shooting percentage this year, and that was Tyler Toffoli of Montreal. Like, he had a 17 shooting percentage this year. Obviously, like you said, Scott, like when you're shooting that high, you're gonna regress. But there's something with Toffoli of being a sniper, and now he's going to be playing with Cole Caulfield and Nick Suzuki, and he's going to be a staple on that power play one. Yeah. There's something that I love at that 158 ADP. I mean, Caulfield's going at like 100, all the hype's on Caulfield, but I don't think that we should forget about what Toffoli can do and what he's done since he's left the Kings organization. We saw what he did with Vancouver in the playoffs, and then he had his year with the Canadiens, which, you know, he was unbelievable on.
I think it was like a 45 goal pace.
Yeah, 45 goal pace, which is insane. But I think I really like that ADP, and I'd probably pick him around the 100 ADP more than what he's at right now at 158.
Yeah, like, I mean, the percentages are a great thing to look with Toffoli, because in his career, he's had years where he scores at a really high percentage. He's had years where he scores at like 6% of his shots. And you're like, and these are some of his years with the Kings, where he has these great play driving numbers and you know, the dominant Corsi. Then you're like, well, he scored on like 5.8% of his shots, and you know, for fantasy purposes, it was like a lost season. And so you kind of have to keep that in mind. But I kind of, at this stage of his career, I would be surprised if Toffoli, you know, all of a sudden dropped a 6% shooting season for Montreal. So I think, you know, I don't expect him to score on a 45 goal pace over a full year. I think that's probably unreasonable. But 30 plus is probably still reasonable, you know, given his role on Montreal, and given kind of, I mean, he was their best forward last year, and I don't think that they're going to be inclined to, you know, cut back on his ice time. They're probably going to need him to lead Suzuki, Caulfield, those guys. You know, they're the ones who are, you know, the future of the Habs. But if the Habs are, you know, kind of playing for the present, Tyler Toffoli still has to be a big part of it.
Yeah, I think the opportunity is definitely there of like teaching those young guys and like playing like a lot. I think it's more about, you know, he's going to be a staple in that PP1 and playing on line one for a guy of an ADP of 158. You know, I really like that. Who were you thinking, Scott?
Well, one of the guys who I look at, and this is kind of going the opposite way on percentages, is Dylan Larkin with the Red Wings, because, I mean, in some ways, when you play for a really bad team, you can kind of expect that your percentages are going to be on the low side of things. But Larkin's were kind of off the charts really low. Like, his shooting percentage was 6.7%. His on-ice shooting percentage, which means, you know, what his team shot during 5-on-5 play with him on the ice, was 4.9%, which is, you know, that's low for a fourth liner, let alone for a guy who's the number one center. And so I expect Larkin to have significantly better numbers this season, and it's not as though the Red Wings are looking like a great team anyway. There are still some flaws there, but I think just based on percentages alone, I expect Larkin to be much more productive this season.
I think you hit it on the dot there with Larkin. I think last year for the fantasy hockey season, everyone loved Larkin as sort of like an undervalued sleeper type of guy, and he just didn't. I guess he didn't live up to that expectation that everyone thought he was. But I think now that everyone is actually like sleeping on him and not talking about him, that he could have, like you said, a bounce back year.
Yeah.
Well, I also have a second player here who plays on the same line as Dylan Larkin, and that is Jakub Vrana of the Detroit Red Wings. He's going ADP 169 in the 15th round. Last year we saw 19 goals and 17 assists in 50 games. And only 5 of those points were on the power play, and 100 total shots. So at 169 overall, he's basically free in drafts.
Yeah,
and that's
a gift.
Yeah, and this is one of the best 5-on-5 goal producing wingers in the NHL. He was buried on the third line with Washington, but now that he's got traded for Mantha to the Red Wings, he's going to be first line with Larkin and Zadina, and he'll actually get some power play one time. All his production in his career has been at even strength. Like last year, even when he just got to Detroit, 11 points in 11 games and only 1 point on the power play, right? So if they move him into the power play, he could be a point per game player this year. I truly believe that. And I really think a big breakout is coming for Vrana this year.
I mean, the power play is the whole value change for him. Is it if he gets, I mean, it was so hard to crack the Washington power play, right? You have the same guys who are in the same spot and they play for a minute and 48 seconds, and you get out there on the second unit for 12 seconds. And Vrana never really got a chance to be part of that. And so, as you said, he was a great 5-on-5 scorer. kind of throughout his time in Washington. But when you go to Detroit, a team that doesn't have the same kind of talent, you would still hope that he can score at 5-on-5, but the opportunity really should be there for him to get power play time.
Yeah.
And so I agree. And given that ADP that low for the upside that Vrana has, I think that's a gift.
Yeah, and they'll give him lots of minutes 5-on-5 too, with being first line now instead of third line with Washington.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a good pick. I think that he's proven that he can be a goal scorer, and he's finally getting that chance of a full season with a team that all he's going to get is opportunity with Detroit.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Scott, who do you like? Do you have anyone else you're thinking of here? And you have Larkin. Anyone else?
Yeah, one of the guys who I kind of liked last year, but then he broke his wrist at the World Juniors was Kirby Dach for Chicago. And he finished his rookie season really kind of getting a big opportunity. Like they were playing him 18, 19 minutes a game, and he was on the first power play unit right at the end of that season. And so you could look ahead and be, oh, this is great opportunity. And then he broke his wrist, and kind of by the time he got into Chicago's lineup last season, he just wasn't. He didn't really have a big impact. I mean, he scored 1 goal in 20 games. But overall, Dach still drives play, and he's going to get a great opportunity there this year. Like even with Jonathan Toews coming back, Dach still has a chance that he could center Patrick Kane. And if that opportunity is there, there's a lot of points to be had. And if he ends up with a spot still on the first power play unit, again, there's a chance for Dach to really have a breakout season. This is coming a year later than I expected, or a season later than I expected, but I'm still, buying my shares in Kirby Dach.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Kirby Dach because Rob Reese was big on Kirby Dach in our breakout episode. He stated that he thinks that he potentially could get 70 points this year.
Yeah, 70 points.
Was what he said.
If you end up playing with Patrick Kane, there's a real chance.
Oh, of course.
That's sometimes. And I mean, if you look back to when Kane played with Artemi Panarin, and everybody thought Kane was kind of dragging Panarin along, and maybe that wasn't quite the case as we've seen since. But that the opportunity is there. That Kane puts up a lot of points, and whether it's power play or even strength, he can score. And so if Dach is kind of along for that ride, but also a pretty promising player in his own right. He's not Michael Handzus centering Patrick Kane. This is a different kind of player, higher upside. And so, yeah, if he breaks through, like I expect a breakthrough, whether it's this season or next is kind of the question.
Yeah. Definitely being undervalued in drafts for this year.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so that's 6 or 5 undervalued player. I guess we did talk about Jason Robertson a little bit as a 6. But Scott, it's been a pleasure having you on. We're going to put all his information in the description, so make sure you go check him out on Twitter. We follow him on Twitter. He's a great follow on Twitter. And make sure you go listen to his podcast. And make sure you like, comment on the video, and see you guys next week.